To our second topic of the day, guys. The tenure of Jeff Gorton ended 2 weeks ago during our broadcast. I still love sharing that video, especially me looking down going, oh, wait, what? and also,
the New York Rangers fire President John Davidson and Jeff Gorton, both dismissed by CEO Jim Dolan.
Wait, what? Wow.
Assistant GM Chris Drury is...
And also how quickly we eliminated that question of the Minnesota Wild being in trouble for Vegas. So just to talk about the Jeff Gorton era and how that went, sure, you can look at a lot of things that are positives. He acquired Mika Zibabanejad. He got Artemi Panarin and Adam Fox. He made the roster younger. Got them out of some cap hell. But more positives, the Rick Nash trade, which netted Ryan Lindgren, Ryan Strome, and Keandre Miller. And then you got some negatives. The Ryan McDonough trade looks to be a total fail. Nils Lundqvist pending. Drafting Elias Anderson over Marnie Nikish. Wait, I said it wrong. Nakish.
Natchez.
See, by the way, do you remember Stanislav Neskash, who was spelled N?
He was really terrible with the Rangers.
Yeah, he was good with Ottawa. And then some moves that are kind of debatable. You got the Jacob Trouba trade, the Brady Shea extension, FIlip Chytil, and the entire Kevin Shattenkirk tenure. But John, I'm going to start with you. What do you really think when you're thinking back to Jeff Gorton? Now, again, I think we're all in the segment. We wouldn't have fired him, right?
I don't know. I mean, I've had people on social media tell me that his job was on the hot seat, and I didn't believe that. I really didn't. I thought that he would have gotten another season or two to work with, and if he didn't make it after next season, he would have been fired. But it was weird how that just came out of nowhere. It really goes to show you that there are some major philosophical differences between Gorton and Davidson and Dolan and Sather, because we all know Sather is in Dolan's ear. That's definitely how all this happened, because James Dolan has admitted on several occasions that he does not know his ass from a hole in the ground when it comes to hockey. Not that he knows it in basketball, but he's worse off.
No, it's in the corner.
I will say that, if anything, I don't know. It's really tough for me to say, because he did. I mean, like you said, he got some youth in here, but some of the positive moves that he did, like the Adam Fox trade, that fell into his lap. Artemi Panarin wanting to play here fell into his lap. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say that the Jacob Trouba trade was atrocious, because I really don't think Neil Pionk would have ever prospered here. And I think we'd be looking at him and saying, oh, well, we need to get a bigger guy who's more physical and who's more of a two-way guy than Neil Pionk. I mean, would Neil Pionk help the team's power play? Maybe. But were you really going to have him on there over Adam Fox? No. And that's another thing. So, I'm not going to say the Trouba trade is a total loss for them. I don't like the Trouba contract. I understand why they gave him 8. But I feel like they kind of bid against themselves, because he really only wanted to be here. That's another thing. He wanted to be here. So why are you bidding against yourselves when you have a guy that wants to be here? Squeeze him for 7. Keep him under 7 if you can. Listen, I know that he was going to get a raise, but you don't have to go from 6 to 8. You could have went from 6 to 7 and kept him there. The Brendan Smith signing was a really bad signing. I mean, that contract was just awful. Drafting Elias Anderson was, again, a panic move. I've said this. I know I've said this several times to Anthony. I've probably said it to you in the past, Mark. But that was a panic move in getting Elias Pettersson stolen from them. And who knows how different everything looks if they have Elias Pettersson. Maybe there's no Alexis Lafreniere here at this point. So
that's a good point too.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have a young potential franchise center there, but you probably wouldn't have that first overall pick.
We'll go into the luck factor on that in a little bit in our next segment. But Andy, I'll go with you first. What do you think about the Jeff Gorton era?
I mean, John said it really well. A lot of the positives that you look at, like Panarin wanted to play for the Rangers, so that was an easy signing for him. Fox wanted to play for the Rangers. So a lot of the moves he made, it was kind of just him having to facilitate it because the pieces of it happening were already laid. But you can't also overlook the fact that he did have a really fast rebuild. The Rangers are a competitive team. He pushed a lot of the right buttons. I would think my biggest gripe with him, aside from like the McDonough trade, is just re-signing Chris Kreider for the amount of money that he did. It's you can see it from a mile away when you have a player like Kreider, who's obviously not old, but he's aging a little bit. And when you give a guy 7 years, right? When you give a guy a 7-year contract,
7 years, 6.5 per.
Yeah, 6.5 per.
So when you give a guy a 7-year contract that's getting older, you're just setting yourself up for in 2 to 3 years, the guy's game is going to start to fall even more. And then now you're left with a contract that you can't move. So, and let's face it, at the time, Kreider would have fetched a pretty good return if they would have traded him. So, I think that was a mistake signing him to that deal. I think that might hurt, might or might not hurt the Rangers cap wise. We'll see. A couple of years when the cap goes up, maybe it doesn't. But I do think that was a negative. And then the Trouba contract, like John said, the trade itself. I mean, I get he was coming off a really good year in Winnipeg. Neil Pionk didn't really turn into the guy that he is right now for Winnipeg yet. They felt they could afford to use him because the upgrade getting Trouba was so good, but again, the contract part of it, so $8 million. I think only the elite defenseman should get $8 million plus. And Trouba isn't an elite defenseman, so and now that contract is going to hurt the Rangers. So in hindsight, those two contracts I thought were bad. But otherwise, like I said, I think he did set the Rangers up for success. They have a lot of pieces in play. They're a young team. So barring, any catastrophic injuries to anybody or whatnot, I think the Rangers are set to have some success in the next couple of years. But so I guess if you want to look at his tenure, like just as a whole, I wouldn't give him an A at the same time. I wouldn't give him a D. Kind of, split in half. Maybe just give him a solid B overall, if I had to say, as a grade. But it's a general manager. It's tough because you're always going to be criticized for your work. People are going to look and say, okay, if you did this or you didn't do that. I will say it's hard to be them most likely because regardless of what happens, you're going to have people that are going to say, oh, you just got fleeced or what you. So you always it's a kind of like a thankless job in some ways in that regard when you talk the player movement. But overall, I would probably lean more towards saying that his tenure was a success rather than a failure. But I can see why people would be happy maybe that he was gone or even try to say that, he didn't really do all that much for the team, but I would disagree with the latter. But, hey, no one's perfect, and we could leave it at this. He's better than Mike Milbury by far.
That's not saying much.
I mean, geez, and we'll go with he's better than Garth Snow as well. I would have to say my one gripe, and I'm going to get this out right now, he never addressed the bottom six. The Rangers' bottom six it's not been the same since Dominic Moore left, and even I can't believe I forgot the guy's name for a second. John, the fourth line center got drafted by Vegas in the expansion draft. He got his first NHL goal 2015 against the Blackhawks. Swedish defenseman. I can't believe I forgot his name.
Wait, what?
The Rangers center, he was
Oh, Oscar Lindberg.
Oh, thank you. How did I forget Lindberg? Jesus.
You said Swedish defenseman for a second.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. I meant to say center. But yeah, Swedish. I mean, Oscar Lindberg. I mean, even though you can't even find him on a milk carton anymore, he would have at least still been an upgrade over what they got. I kind of like Kevin Rooney, but I'm not sure on him yet. He turned in a decent season, but
Howden. Yeah,
well, Brett Howden. I don't even know what to say about Brett Howden anymore, except for just goodbye. We know we've seen this movie. Yeah, Phil says it all right there. Now, I think a little bit of his tenure is going to be he accumulated as much assets as possible for the Rangers, and when he's accumulating all these assets, you're getting asset. You're not starting to think about roles yet. You're just thinking about assets. And again, there's going to be 2 more points about that coming up soon in the next segment. But if you're getting all these assets, then you got to remember you only have 6 defensemen you can use per game, 12 forwards you could use per game, 2 goaltenders. I mean, hell, look what we had with the Rangers. There's 1 net, and last year they had 3 goalies, and they completely fumbled ending Henrik Lundqvist's tenure with the Rangers. I mean, that'll be an editorial that'll do it at a later date, because fortunately news keeps coming out that I have to keep putting that off. It's sort of like if you remember How I Met Your Mother, where they started seeing each other's faults and you could hear glass shattering behind them. It's like a shattered image. I kind of have that shattered image right now with Jeff Gorton. There were a lot of errors. There's a lot of good stuff. I'm not under the opinion of I wouldn't have fired him anymore. Now it's kind of like maybe, but still, I mean, I think there was a definite vision. I think he should have had 1 more season at least to at least fix it. I wouldn't have fired John Davidson, but I know why that happened too. So I'm wondering what Chris Drury is going to bring with this organization, and maybe that'll work. I mean, after all, Steve Yzerman went to Detroit. He didn't have a Stanley Cup ring with Tampa Bay, so he's the one that built that team. So we'll see how it goes. Lots of times that happens where you're not the one that finishes the rebuild. We were talking about it with Quinn, but we'll see about it soon. Final words on this, John?
I mean, I mentioned that, funny enough. I don't know if I said it in the last telecast, but I mentioned the whole Buck Showalter thing, the Buck Showalter effect. Like I mean, the next coach doesn't have to necessarily be the guy that takes them all the way, but develop the guys. That's why I mentioned Gallant, because I think if Gallant's not that guy, he could be the Buck Showalter. Maybe Jeff Gorton is the Buck Showalter. I mean, you have to break it down in 3 different things. You have to break it down by
or Gene McMichael, I guess, for the Yankees would be another way of looking at that.
Oh well, Gene Michael was
Gene Michael. Craig McMichael. I mixed him up.
Gene Stick Michael was the architect of that entire dynasty. So, I mean, as far as I'm or any knowledgeable Yankee fan is concerned, but I mean, you have to break it down into different sections. I mean, roster construction, and yeah, he got younger, but you're right. The bottom 6 just wasn't there. There was a lack of grit. There was a lack of toughness. A cap situation, the situation that he put them in cap-wise. The Henrik Lundqvist thing was not really... He had his hands tied there. They should have never given Henrik Lundqvist a no-movement clause as late as they did in his career. That was bad. There was no reason for it. But that also wasn't Jeff Gorton's contract. That was Glenn Sather's contract.
Correct.
So you can't bash Gorton for that. Prospect accumulation and organizational depth. Gorton was great at that. I mean, you could talk about the misses, but overall, he really gave them a lot of good prospects. And ones that still have a lot of value that could possibly be in a Jack Eichel trade this summer. So, that, and then I would say... just the overall results as the final part of that. And I mean, the fact that they got into a play-in spot last year and still got Alexis Lafreniere out of it, that's pretty good. Overall, I could see why they fired him, though. There was definitely there's definitely a rift, and there definitely was a rift and a disconnect between the two parts of the upper office up there. Just like how Brian Cashman used to have goes at it with the so-called Tampa faction of Billy Connors and them when George Steinbrenner was still alive and really had his finger on the Yankees. So I'm going to say this, though. I've got a lot of faith in Chris Drury. Chris Drury is an analytics guy. He knows what it takes. He's been there in the organization right behind Sather and Gorton for how long? I think he has enough of an old school perspective combined with a new school perspective that he should be able to take this team to the next level. So I have a lot of faith in Chris Drury. If we had a lesser experienced GM, or if they decided to do something stupid like bring in Mark Messier and have him in a position like that, then I would be really scared at that point. But Chris Drury, Pittsburgh wanted him for a reason when Jim Rutherford stepped down. Just remember that.
Anthony, last word?
So I'll make this comparison. Sometimes you have a guy that can lay the ground pieces and the foundation, and then you just need another person to take those pieces and lead you to the promised land. So, for instance, Gar Snow drafted Anders Lee, Brock Nelson stole Beuvillier and Barzal from Edmonton in the draft. Drafted Pelech, Pullock, Cizikas. He brought Matt Martin, the heart and soul of the Islanders, back to the team. So Lou Lamoriello inherited a lot of the pieces that the Islanders already have. But then he came in, sprinkled in Pajot, solidified them up the middle. Then he gets another goal scorer in Kyle Palmieri, and just kind of puts his. And then most importantly, he finally gets Ilya Sorokin over. I don't know if John remembers it or if it was ever 100% confirmed, but for a while it was reported that Sorokin said he didn't want to play for a Gar Snow-run Islander team. For the longest time, I was like, I always got to get him over here. Lou finally got him over here. So, he laid the ground pieces. Lou took it to the next level. Same with the Rangers. Gorton did a lot of good for the Rangers. He set them up in a good spot. Now maybe it's Drury's opportunity to put his stamp on the team and bring the Rangers to the promised land. So that's the best I could say about it. I think he did his job. He had pros, he had cons, but he did what he could. Now it's time for somebody else to take over and finish the job.
And I'll just finish up my word on this by saying, I'll finish your metaphor. You get guys that they come in, they lay the foundation, the people frame up the house. I wish there was an example of someone having work done on their house right now that could help me and be inspired to think about this. But you end up having different people to do different things as it goes down the line. Sometimes it goes through a different architect, so it just happens. But we want to know what you think. How did the Jeff Gorton tenure end? Did you like it? Would you have given him another year? Can you look at his misses and go, oh, geez? Because, by the way, you know what? Before we get away from this, let me throw one thing out at everybody. Because there's another miss, potentially, on the horizon for the Rangers. Well, I like Vitaly Kravtsov. I like the way he looks. And he's one of the reasons why I say the Rangers have a roster crunch coming. But Oliver Wahlstrom and Noah Dobson are in the playoffs right now. And you know who didn't draft them? Jeff Gorton. He could have drafted either one of them. Which, by the way, that's one thing the Rangers would need is another defenseman to be up there. So, if you like what we're saying, leave us a like. Don't forget to share it. We'll have shorter segments on this throughout the week. Like, share, and subscribe. And you guys have been doing that. We love the support we're getting. Moving on to our Bar Talk segment. Did you like that video? Of course you did. So why not check out some more of our content? You can check the playlist right here or right here.
Your ideas are intriguing to me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.